Hi, this is for my 1101 classes. So if you're from 1102 and you've stumbled upon this essay discussion, then you're in the wrong video. But if you're in 1101, I want to talk to you about the expectations for this essay. If you open up the prompt, you see that the specifications are there. It needs to be a minimum 1,000 words in length. It needs to have all MLA format considerations from the last name and space and page number in the upper right on the first page all the way to the end of the works cited page. Hopefully the exercise that you do this week will help you make sure you get your works cited page correctly. Now, this first essay, I have not asked you for any outside research. So if you're not quoting or restating anything from a website, everything, you don't need to do a works cited page. But if you're talking about information that you weren't born with, then I expect a citation, okay? Anytime I see quotation marks, I expect to see a citation in parentheses and an entry on the works cited page, whether you quote directly or not, okay? Be very careful about plagiarism. We've talked about that since the beginning of the semester. Just don't do it. If you have any questions, that's an email to me. Mr. Barker, look at this paragraph. Did I cite this correctly or is it plagiarized? That's an email that I would be happy to answer, okay? So, all the MLA format for grammar and everything is expected. There will be a rubric that includes thesis statement, requirements of the prompt, organization, grammar, and analysis. I'm leaning heavily on thesis statement because in my experience, essays that do not rely on good thesis statement claims tend to be all review or summary. I don't need to read the plot of your text unless there's a reason for me, the reader, to know what the plot is. Now, summary is a tool like everything else, but if it's not used correctly, then it's just eating up the word count, and that's not good style. So you would probably lose some points on that. So what the prompt says for you to do is choose a narrative cultural artifact, which is an example of a film, a book, a TV show, any of those things, as long as it's narrative in nature, it tells a story, and created during the 1950s, okay? Some people I have approved a text from the 1960s, like an episode of A Twilight Zone, because that TV show started in the 50s and continued on in the 60s, but they ask in advance. So please make sure if you're going to do something or are interested in doing something from a different era that you ask in advance, okay? Because the 60s were very different according to values than the 50s were, and that's one of the reasons why it's a little tricky, okay? So it says created in the decades of the 50s that deals with the subject you have chosen to analyze regarding values, okay? And please, let me say this clearly. You are not writing an essay about a movie or about a short story. You're writing an essay about a subject. And that subject is what needs to be introduced in your introductory paragraph. You will eventually, remember how I said you start off broad, giving context, and then you eventually narrow it down to, okay, well, one place we learn about values is in cultural artifacts. Specifically in film, see how you keep narrowing it down to broad subject. How do we learn about this subject? Cultural artifacts, that narrows it a little. Specifically film. You know, and then in this particular film, so you got it all the way down to where you probably should end your first paragraph, your introductory paragraph, with your thesis statement. Okay? So make sure your organization looks something like that. Does your thesis statement have to be the last sentence? No. Please don't make it the first sentence. That is annoying as all get out because it just is. Don't do it. Okay? For me. When you get out into the real world and are writing for other professors, you follow what they said. But for me, do not start with your thesis statement. I want you to build up to giving context and then getting to it, because if you use it as the last sentence of your first paragraph, that serves as a great transition sentence to get into your body paragraphs, okay? All right. So it says, for example, if you choose feminism or female roles or gender roles in society, then you might look at the film Attack of the 50-Foot Woman. You could look at the Leave It to Beaver. You could look at Twilight Zone. You could look at any TV show from that time period to see how men and women behaved and the values that of the things they say. I was watching a video the other day of a movie from 55, I believe, called The Next Voice You Hear. And we'll be yawning. No. And it's about this church that finds this radio that God talks through the church, through the radio. But one of the very first scenes is a husband and little boy and wife sitting around the breakfast table eating breakfast. And the wife goes to pick up a piece of toast, and the husband literally reaches over and grabs it from her and says, "Oh, I thought you were going on a diet or trying to lose some weight." And she's like, "Oh, you're right, dear." You know, and I'm thinking, somebody would go to jail if they tried that with a female, you know, in 2021. And rightfully so. But she kind of gets the last laugh, because after the husband and the son leave, she sits back down at the breakfast table, picks up that toast and starts buttering it. It's kind of a FU to them. So that tells you everything you need to know about the values and the expectations, is that even though they might go along with them, they didn't agree with them. That sort of analysis that you're looking to do. Okay? Analyze your cultural artifact to identify the values of that time period regarding your subject. And with identification and analysis, at least 2 influencers of the time period. So remember, I posted this before. It talks about your value and your influencers. Please use this to help guide you, okay? Remember, how do we tell characters in a story's value, no matter what the time period? Well, it's the things they do and the things they say. So keep that in mind. Your thesis must be a claim about your subject and the values towards that subject. For example, in his 1962 film, The Brain That Wouldn't Die, director Joseph Green uses an image of a headless woman to show how women were literally trapped in stereotypical roles and ultimately objectified in the 1960s to show how little men valued women beyond their expected gender roles. So that was a film from an essay I wrote about a film in the 60s. So remember your 4 parts of your thesis. There needs to be in that thesis statement. It needs to be author or director if it's a film or TV show. Text title needs to be a message, and what tool did they use? In this one, they used the imagery of a head being trapped, you know, in this movie. So if you're still kind of sketchy on what tool means, that's a conversation we can have. It's any of those 6 elements of style. There are lots of other tools like characterization, using foils. So you're not limited to those. Just keep them in mind, okay? And this is an analytical essay, not a report or a review. Okay, you're not analyzing the entertainment value of your text. You're analyzing values regarding your subject during the 50s. Okay, and when you get to your conclusion, that's when you can bring in the I. Well, I think this about those values of that day, or I think these were good values to have, you know, and we should make America great again by going back to those values. Or you can be like, yeah, these values are so antiquated and outdated. Thank God things have changed. That's where you bring you to the essay. You can use I. It's really the only place other than anecdotes where you can use I. Stay away from you as you're writing. Because you need to stay objective. And that's all for now. So if you have any questions, remember, this is not due at the end of this week, but next week. So if you still haven't picked an artifact, you're going to turn in a first draft, and you cannot expect higher than a first draft grade, which is usually a D or a C. because none of us are good first draft writers. Now, I know you guys have work. I know you have other classes. But we have had literally since the beginning of the semester to work on this essay 1. That's why I'm expecting everything to be on point. And if it's not, and you didn't call or email or ask questions in a Google Meet, whatever, that's on you. Make me do my job. I'm here to help. I want you guys and gals to do well, okay? But do not expect any grade above a 0 if you don't get this turned in time. I'm telling you, I will open up the folder a week, probably this Friday, so you can submit it anytime between then. So even if you just get a first draft and you submit it, you have something in there. Then you go back and clean it up, you resubmit it, perfectly fine, okay? I will only look at the last submission, all right? Stay healthy, stay well. I know I'm talking fast, but we got a lot to cover. Take care. Bye-bye.